To this day. To this day.
Rich people don't sleep 8 hours a day.
That's stupid. Use your common sense.
What up, Bushido Spirit? Lovecraft Country Episode 2. Whitey is on the moon. Now, this review will be a little bit different. It'll be much quicker, and it'll be less of a recap. It'll be just a quick notes about the episode. But before I continue, be sure to like, comment, and sub to the channel for more Lovecraft Country reviews / discussions. So let's get right into it. Samuel Braithwaite, relative of Titus Braithwaite, is the leader of a secret fraternal society called the Order of Ancient Dawn. His mission in life is to open a portal to the Garden of Eden and step into eternal life. However, he is not the blood heir of Titus. Atticus is. His mother's secret ancestry, written about in the letter his father sent, is the one of Titus Braithwaite. Titus, like all old white men at the time, decided vanilla wasn't enough. He wanted some chocolate. Guess it was all that damn supremacy. Made him wonder what the other side was like. And apparently he couldn't get enough of it. Old Mr. White impregnated one of his slaves, Hannah, who is Tick's great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. But the story doesn't end there. Titus, like Samuel, his successor, wanted to be immortal, so he pioneered the ritual, gathered other like-minded individuals, and founded the Order of Ancient Dawn. He even built a secret lodge in Artem to practice his witchcraft. But all was for naught because he ended up killing himself and everyone at that lodge, except for his slave Hannah, who he impregnated. She managed to escape the burning building, and in her belly was the last remnants of his magical bloodline. Now going back to present day. So in order to make his dream possible, Samuel captured and imprisoned Montrose to lure Atticus out. He figured with his powers and the blood of Titus' heir, he could become the Adam he always wanted to be. Not without help though. Christina, his daughter, being a formidable mage herself, made sure Atticus and crew arrived as planned. She even went as far as to save them from the racists in Simmonsville, summoned and removed the vampire creatures near the edge of Artem, which we learned those creatures are guard dogs, birthed from cows, under some sort of spell, and the whistle we heard tames them. In this episode, we see Christina with that whistle as she saves the crew again on horseback. She may have been the architect of this whole plan. Samuel on several occasions says, "My daughter believes you can help." Samuel doesn't care to be friends with Atticus. He only acknowledges his existence because of his usefulness. Christina, however, is outwardly accommodating. I wonder what she is planning. She is definitely scheming. With that being said, despite Christina's insight and magical prowess, she isn't allowed to participate. The Order of Ancient Dawn is a patriarchal secret society, a fraternity, sons of sons. So for the most part, she is left out of any business dealing with the organization. She is only present to aid her father. She's never invited to any of the meetings or anything. Speaking of the ritual, Atticus refuses to participate in it. Him and the others try to escape once they find his father Montrose, but they run into a barrier, a literal barrier, preventing them from leaving Artem. Samuel pulls up with the cannon and shoots George and Letitia, forcing Atticus to yield. Now this is mostly a scare tactic. He ends up healing Letitia, but leaves George injured until after the ritual at dawn. Unfortunately for Samuel, he won't make it to episode 3 because his little ritual was not a success. He gets turned into stone and the mansion collapses once again. It seems he was unworthy of God's blessing. He suffered the same fate as Titus Braithwaite. Unfortunately for us, the viewer, George dies as well. Given that Samuel died during the ritual, he could no longer keep his promise and heal George. He dies from the gunshot wound. However, before George dies, he spills all the tea this episode. First, in a hallucination sequence, we learn Dora, Atticus's mother, was George's long-lost lover. This explains why he gets so nervous talking about her and why her picture was in his wallet, a detail I overlooked last episode. Lastly, on the verge of death, he tells Montrose Atticus may not be his son, but this doesn't seem like new or surprising information to Montrose. In response, he says, I thought we agreed to not talk about this anymore, as if they settled it. The dysfunction makes sense now. So Montrose resents his son because he favors George more than him. A reminder he may not be the father. This also explains why he lashes out at Atticus when their beliefs don't align. When he sees Tick read Lovecraft, he thinks of George piping his wife. On top of that, George never stepped in when their father abused Montrose for his beliefs. And now when Montrose abuses Atticus for the same reasons, he's in an awkward situation. They agreed Atticus was Montrose's son, so if he does step in, it'd be like reclaiming Tick for himself. It's not yet explained how the two men found themselves in this situation. Hopefully, now that George is out of the picture, he can now be nicer to his son. And then the final thing I wanted to discuss, Letitia motherfucking Lewis. She did not play a major role in the plot this episode, but she did receive more development. Her mother used to neglect her as a child. She would leave for days and weeks. Each time she'd come back, she'd have a different man on her arm. She abandoned Letty, so Letty abandoned her. She never showed for the funeral. We also get to see how thirsty she is. She hasn't seen Atticus in years. Didn't even recognize who he was back in Chicago. Yet she is already having hallucinations about him. Man. Atticus' harem continues to grow. First it was Gia back in Korea. Now it's Letitia and possibly Christina. This man Atticus is not slick at all. I've peeped game. Is William your boyfriend? Come on, man. He might as well said, you the first white woman I met who hasn't ran away in fear. Let's be the first to integrate. So that was pretty much my review, but here are some final thoughts, some things that I didn't talk about yet, but are important to the overall story. So the mansion completely collapsed, and I wonder who all survived. I wonder if Christina is still alive, and if she planned for this. Because like I mentioned, she was the main one pushing her father to capture Atticus, thinking that he may be able to help with the ritual, given that he is the heir to Titus. And despite the amount of help she gave her father, he never reciprocated that. She was never invited to any of the meetings. She was locked out. And a stranger from off the street, a black stranger, got invited to the big table just for being a man that had to have burnt her inside. Hell, she may have orchestrated this whole thing. I don't think we've seen the last of her. I don't think we've seen the last of William. I know them two didn't die in the fucking house. One thing I will say about this episode is it did move pretty quickly. A lot of things seem to have concluded. So I don't know where it's going from here. Like, they introduced these characters, then they killed them off immediately. And, lastly, I just want to say rest in peace to George. George was the real MVP this episode. He was really the glue that held the group together. When the crew was under a spell, hallucinating about their past, he calmed everybody down. He was the person that discovered where Montrose was at. He was such a pivotal part of the team. Having him gone is going to affect a lot of different things. I mean, his knowledge of books was infinite. He would use those books in terrible situations and find ways out of that situation. And now it's up to Atticus. He's passed all of that knowledge down to Atticus. Atticus is basically his son. He reads just as many books. So yeah, I'm kind of excited about that. Atticus is already a great character. Just the way he moves around, just how intense he is at certain times, just how cunning and clever he can be at other times. So he's not just intense and raging. There's many facets of his character. Same with all the characters. Same with Letitia. We see in this episode she was more vulnerable. Last episode, she kind of took charge. She wasn't afraid to run to the car despite the monsters chasing them. She was the driver in Simmonsville. So really, all of these characters play an important part of the story, and they are all pretty strong characters. Even Montrose is kind of a strong character. You can really see the complexity of his character just by talking to people that knew him. Just by looking at the table in his house, you can see that he's a complicated man. Like, we see the alcohol glass and the book, and then in the book is a picture of his family. That's layers right there. Layers alone on that scene itself. And then when we first see him, first introduced to him, he's upset. He is upset that they came to rescue him, because apparently that letter that was written was only written to trap them there. He didn't really intend to write that letter. He was under duress. And it's kind of pretty easy to hate that character right off the bat. Just seeing how he treats his son. I mean, it's not his fault that he was born into this fucked up situation between him and George. Hopefully they make us like this character more. Hopefully he softens up a bit. That's what I'm looking forward to. And I'm just more interested in Letitia as well. She's some sort of activist. She's out here protesting, politicking and all of that. Also, again, Sammy. What's Sammy's deal? They didn't show Sammy getting his dick sucked for no reason. I refuse to believe that. That scene was there for a reason. What is old Sammy's deal? What is his involvement in this whole thing? Also, Dee and George's wife, I forgot her name. Hippolyta, I think. Hippolyta. How will she take her husband being dead? And will she continue creating these guides? Will she go on these trips alone? And I'm serious, this is the last thing. You know a show was good when you start looking up the soundtrack, the fucking playlist and shit, man. Man, that Gil Scott-Heron song was perfect at that moment in time. That was perfect. I didn't even know he made that song until I heard it on this television show. It is super similar to The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. That is pretty much it. What are your thoughts on the episode? Did I get things wrong? If so, please correct me in the comment section below.